The task of writing a history of our nation, from Rome's earliest days, fills me, I confess, with some misgiving. And even were I confident in the value of my work, I should hesitate to say so. I am aware that for historians to make extravagant claims is, and always has been, all too common. Every writer on history tends to look down his nose at his less cultivated predecessors, happily persuaded that he will better them in point of style or bring new facts to light. But however that may be, I shall find satisfaction in contributing, not I hope ignobly, to the labor of putting on record the story of the greatest nation in the world. Countless others have written on this theme, and it may be that I shall pass unnoticed amongst them. If so, I must comfort myself with the greatness and splendor of my rivals, whose work will rob my own of recognition. My task, moreover, is an immensely laborious one. I shall have to go back more than 700 years and trace my story from its small beginnings up to these recent times, when its ramifications are so vast that any adequate treatment is hardly possible. I am aware, too, that most readers will take less pleasure in my account of how Rome began and in her early history. They will wish to hurry on to more modern times and to read of the period, already a long one, in which the might of an imperial people is beginning to work its own ruin. My own feeling is different. I shall find antiquity a rewarding study, if only because while I am absorbed in it, I shall be able to turn my eyes from the troubles which for so long have tormented the modern world, and to write without any of that over-anxious consideration which may well plague a writer on contemporary life, even if it does not lead him to conceal the truth. That, my friends, is from the History of Livy. That's the opening paragraphs of the History of Livy. The History of Livy, the Roman history, is your Sunday Penguin for today. Welcome, my friends, welcome to the stately Vaughan Manor, and your Sunday Penguin for the day, which is the Roman history of Livy. Titus Livius, who was born in 59 BC and died in 80 AD 17, and he wrote a gigantic Roman history. It was big. This Roman history was 142 books long, but only 35 of them survive, unfortunately. All of which are published by Penguin. We have the early history of Rome. We have Rome and Italy, which is the second volume. We've got the volume that, if anybody's read Livy, this is probably it. This is The War with Hannibal, which is their third volume. And their final concluding volume, Rome and the Mediterranean. So 4 volumes of Livy in the Penguin edition. Livy is a fascinating historian. And like I said, most people who have read Livy have read either this part, the first opening books of Livy, the early history of Rome, or they've read The War with Hannibal. In fact, the oldest volume of Livy I have, which is this one, this was published in 1898, I think. Let me take a look. Yeah, 1898 is when this one was published. This History of Rome. There's Livy right there. And this 1898 edition just has selections from the opening books and from the Hannibal section of the history, because those are the popular sections. But actually all of the Roman history is well worth reading. It's all really interesting stuff. Now, Livy's history begins, as Livy says, at the very beginning of Rome. So he had to go back 700 years from his own time. And he was living and working in the time of Augustus. He had seen some tumultuous episodes in his life because the Roman Revolution had happened, the fall of the Roman Republic, and the beginning of the Roman Empire under Augustus Caesar. So he's already lived through a lot of pretty exciting times. And so he was writing from that time and from that perspective. And so, and the thing about Livy is he lived history. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't a military guy. He lived and breathed history. This was his life's work. And this became like the standard history of Rome for the Romans. It was an acknowledged classic. And these early sections are interesting because there's not a ton of history in here. This is mostly myth and legend. And a lot of these myths, legends, and stories aren't even Roman in origin. A lot of them come from the East. A lot of them come from Greece and elsewhere that have been turned into Roman stories. But they're important because the Romans themselves, most of them believed a lot of this stuff was true that you get in the opening books of this history. And so that in itself makes this a valuable document. Just to find out what the Romans believed about themselves, even if it wasn't really history. Now, there is some history mixed up in here, but it's kind of hard to tease it out, and it's hard to know for sure what is true and what isn't. So when you read this stuff, you have to remember that. A lot of modern historians think that Livy played fast and loose with some of the truth in his history anyway. But it's all fascinating. Very well worth reading. Very readable. He's a very entertaining historian. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why he has remained so popular over time. Also, we have a ton of valuable information from these books. And if we didn't have these books, these books are an essential resource for us to know the history of Rome, even if it's been embellished, even if some of it is wrong. Some of the military aspects of these books has been shown to be wrong. But even still, they're enormously valuable. And he's a very readable historian, like I said. Very entertaining stuff, actually, if you like ancient history. One of the more fun ancient Roman historians, I think. I had a good time reading Livy, and I look forward to reading him again. It's a shame that we do not have more from him. Like I said, he wrote a lot. This history was huge. It was known to be huge in his own time. And so he had a reputation because he wrote this gigantic history of Rome. Not many Romans had read the entire Roman history of Livy. But sadly, that is the way of ancient works of history, or just ancient literature in general. We're missing a ton of it. It's like if you wander into a vast dark warehouse at night and there's only a couple of light bulbs here and there. So you only see a little bit of what's in this vast warehouse. And you have to try to piece together what's in there just from the little bit that you see. That's kind of like Roman history and ancient history in general. Some sections we get a lot of information, like the fall of Rome and the beginning of the Roman Empire. We have a lot of information about that time. But there are whole other sections of history where we don't know much at all about Roman history, or Greek history for that matter. Big long sections that are just blanks, and we have to try to fill it in with what we do know and from archaeology. We do get a ton of information in Livy, though. Not just information on history, but how Livy himself thought and how the people of his time thought and felt about their own history, and indeed about the times that they were living in. You get a sense of that just from the opening paragraphs of the history. So if you're interested in this stuff at all, Livy is essential. I think if you're studying Roman history, Livy is essential. If you're just interested in ancient history at all, you have to read Livy. And you will have a good time doing it, I'm pretty sure. I had a good time reading this history, that's for sure. I know Oxford also has an edition of Livy. I don't know how it is because I have not read it yet. I hope to read it sometime in the future. But the Penguin edition is excellent. It would be nice if there was a one-volume history. I know that would be pretty big, but they can do it. They could do a one-volume history of Livy. I don't know that they ever will. We'll see. I don't know if anybody ever will do a one-volume Livy in print anyway. You can certainly get a lot of Livy on the e-readers, on Kindle and etc. But you never know what kind of translation you're going to get. You know what you're going to get in this, and these are very high quality translations by Aubrey de Selincourt, and not just Aubrey de Selincourt. Who else did the translations of this? Betty Radis did some of the translation. Make sure I'm not skipping anybody. Aubrey de Selincourt again, and the final bit was translated by Henry Bettinson. So we have some different translators on these, but they're all excellent. All great stuff. So yeah, Livy. You should read Livy. Livy's awesome. So that was your Sunday Penguin for today. I will catch you next time.